Hi there, abhik here. In this video, I will try to create and advance the entire checkout flow with Commerce.js and Next.js. You can see the entire demo at the end of this video. Now I have already created the home page and cart page. So let's explain. Alright, so till now what I've done is I've created two pages, index page and cart page, two components, navbar and product, and a lib folder where I have this commerce.js. And also I have installed the Commerce.js SDK, and then I have created this lib folder. Inside that I have created this Commerce.js file, and inside that Commerce.js file I have imported the Commerce SDK from Commerce.js, and then I have initiated that object with the env or the next check public key, right, that you can get from the dashboard. So after I have done this, what I have done is I have inside this app.js I have actually created a piece of state known as cart. I have also imported this commerce over here. There I have retrieved the cart, and then I have set the cart as the response. So to learn more about it, please watch episode 3 of Next.js and tests video series. Then I've created some handler functions like add to cart, which adds the product ID whose ID is passed. It adds that to our cart with the default quantity of 1. Then whatever the response we get, we set the response object's cart object as our cart. Similarly, we do the update quantity where we get the quantity and product ID, and we update the product, that is the cart item, with the desired quantity. With remove item, we just remove that item from our cart. Empty cart is just called, and refresh cart is also there. Then I pass this cart to the navbar, which I will explain later, and the component. This component means all the pages will have the cart, access to cart, add to cart, empty cart, refresh cart, remove item, and update quantity, right? So let's see the index page now. So inside this index page, what happens is I get the static props, and from there I get all the products by products.list and all the categories by categories.list, and this is the format to get them. Then I pass them as props. Now as I pass them as props, I also inside this home function, this is our main component, home page. So here we receive the props of products, categories, and add to cart. This add to cart is received from here. Then I also have search term as the piece of state, which I will explain just few seconds later. So what happens is we display the categories here and the products. The products is very basic. I just map those products which I get from the props. But the categories, what I do here is we map all the categories. But what happens is categories have name and ID, but it does not have the products. It has the count of products, but how many products are there, it has the count of that, but it does not have the actual products which belong to that category. So for that we need to filter our products. We filter our products and we find that category whose category we are rendering. So we find that the categories match or not. If the categories match for that product, then we render that product, otherwise we don't render that product, right? Then for the search term, what happens is I have actually input with the value of search term, and which changes, then we set that search term to the new value that is inputted, right? And then what happens is we check if search term dot length is greater than 0. That means the search term has a valid string, not an empty string. Then we render all those products, filter all those products whose name converted to lowercase also includes the search term, which is also converted to lowercase. If this condition matches, then we will map those products, otherwise we won't. Now to find out more about this, you can watch episode 2 of this video, Next.js and tests video series, to learn watch an entire walkthrough and a better explanation of how things work. Now here let me explain the cart page. So what happens inside this cart page is I get the cart, update quantity, and empty cart, all from the app.js. Then I also have some piece of states for loading handle quantity. Now handle quantity is a function which I will explain just few seconds later. So what happens is, if not cart, that is if cart is undefined, then we will show a span of loading, but if cart is defined, then we will show our cart page. Now inside this cart page, we will again check that if cart has this subtotal object, the subtotal object has this raw property. This raw property is greater than 0 or not. If it is greater than 0, that means the cart is not empty. The cart's total price has a value which is greater than 0. That means the cart is not empty at all. Then we will show the cart's total price, cart items one by one. We will map all the line items, and we will map format this pricing along with the multiplied by the quantity sign, and then the total line total of that item. Then I will show the buttons to increment and decrement the quantity. And here I have a loading scheme which you don't need to understand for this tutorial video, but you can if you want to learn more about this, you can definitely watch episode 3 of this video series, Next.js and tests, right? So also here we have two buttons, empty cart and checkout link, which the checkout page which we will create now. And also if the cart is subtotal raw is not greater than 0, that means if we have empty cart, then we will show this message, please buy something from a store. And let me explain the handle quantity. So here we set loading loading states. As I said, you can watch that video to understand better. And here we call the update quantity with the quantity and product ID to call the to update our quantity. Handle this update quantity, which whenever we click any of this button, so if we click on the plus button, this item.quantity, whatever the quantity it has already, will be updated by 1. And if a minus is clicked, then we will whatever the quantity that item has will be decremented by 1. Okay, so that is it till now. And let me explain the navbar component. So if you can see the navbar component, it is pretty basic. We have the smart links which leverages the use router, and it handles the click, so that we can see that if our href is active, then we will give some stylings, otherwise we will not give some stylings. So that is why we are using the smart links. It is pretty basic, you can check it. You can check episode 4 to learn more about this. And here I have product, which is very basic, nothing fancy going on here. So that is it till now. Let's understand the entire checkout flow. So what will happen is, when our user visits the checkout page for the first time, a token will be generated, checkout token will be generated with using our cart. Then he will be shown this step form, which will have the shipping address form as step 1 and credit card form as step 2. So the first step will be shown only. So here he needs to fill up the shipping address data, such as name, email, address, then country, state, like that. And then he will press the next button, which will take him to step 2, which will have the credit card form and all the data he filled it here. This data, when he clicks the next button, will be stored inside our checkout page, right? And then as he fills up this credit card form and clicks next once again, then the checkout capture process will be started, and he will be shown a message of please wait while we are capturing the checkout, like that. And a loading screen will be shown like that. Okay, and while the checkout will be captured using this data he filled out and the credit card form data as the payment details, and the payment gateway for this video will be test gateway, right? And then after this checkout is captured, then he will be redirected to confirm page, where he will be shown the order reference ID and his order is confirmed successful, the messages like that. And if the capture checkout is unsuccessful, then he will be shown a error message. Inside this checkout page, as I said, I want to render a multi-step form. But how will a multi-step form work? Now you can install third-party libraries if a multi-step form seems overwhelming to you. But since our multi-step form here will have only 2 steps, so I am building that multi-step form on my own. I also imported styles from home.module.css and I applied this div with a class name of styles.container. Now let me explain the step form. So I will be rendering a step form as I said. So let me explain that mechanism. So the first thing I will do is I will create 3 dummy step components. So I've created 3 dummy step components. Step 1 which has step 1 written, step 2 which has step 2 written, and step 3 which has step 3 written. Right? Now how do I intend to render this? So to render this, I want to actually render these 3 steps based on which step is active. So if say first step 1 is active, then I will show this one. If step 2 is active, then I will show this one. If step 3 is active, then I will show this one. Along with those steps, I will also show the buttons. So for example, if step 1 is active, then I will show the next button so that I can go to step 2. If step 2 is active, then I will show previous button and next button. So previous button to go to step 1 and next button to go to step 3. And if step 3 is active, then I will show only previous button so that I can go to step 2. So to keep record of which step is active, I will use state and the default value will be 0. Why we will have 0? That is because I will have an array now. Now using array for these simple steps makes our work very easy. So inside this array, I will actually render these steps, dummy components one by one. So this array has step 1, step 2 and step 3 already rendered. Now inside the checkout component, what I will do is I will render that array and the index of that will be these steps. So what happens is we will render the array and we will pass there an index. So if index value is 0, which is the default value, then it will show the step 1. If it is 1, then it will show step 2. If it is 2, then it will show step 3. Now also here I will have a header which will show the steps active step plus 1. Since if I write here step active state in the first will be 0, so if I write here step 0, that might not make sense to a lot of users. Not all of those users will be programmers, right? So now let's create the functions so that we can increment our active step by 1 or decrement our active step by 1. So the first function will be next step. We will set active step, previous value, then previous value plus 1. Similarly, the previous step function, where we will take the previous value and previous value minus 1. So now I want to render the next step button and the previous step button. So let's conditionally render the buttons for next step and previous step. So I will check if active step is less than steps dot length minus 1. So I will check if active step is less than steps dot length minus 1, then we will show the next button. So I will check that if active step is less than steps dot length minus 1, which means steps dot length minus 1 means the last element of that array, that element's index. So what I will do is I will check that if this active step which will serve as the index for our steps array, so if this active step is less than the last element's index, then we will show our next button. So we will show this next button for all the elements except the last element. Now it does not make any sense to show the next button for step 3, and when we click on this next button, then our use state will be, suppose the next steps, this step 3's index is 2, right? So when I click on this next button, when I am already on step 3 and I click on this next button, what will happen is this will be incremented to 3. But here our steps array has elements from 0, 1 and 2. There is no element at index 3, so this will throw an error, and this also does not make any sense. So we will show this next button only for all the elements except the last element. For all the elements except the last element. Similarly, for previous button, what I will do is For the previous button, what I will do is I will check that if active step is greater than 0, and then we will show this previous step button. So active step greater than 0 means all the elements except the first element. So 0 is the index of the first element. So all active step for all the values except 0. That means all this previous button will be shown for all the elements except the first element, right? So I will save this now. I will open up my terminal. I will run dev server and I will see it in action. You can see step 1 is getting shown. I will click, and then step 2 is getting shown with the next and previous button both. If I click on next again, then it is showing step 3 with the previous button only. If I click on previous again, then step 2 is getting shown with next and previous. And if I press previous again, it will show only step 1 with the next button. We don't want to render the dummy components, right? So I will delete those dummy components over here, and I will keep it blank array for now. And what I will do here is, inside the components directory, I will create a folder known as form. Here we will have our component address form, and another directory will be there. The component will be payment.js. I will write the text later on. So these are the two components which we will render as step forms. So let's create those components one by one. I'll create a component, and for now I will just keep a name over here. Later on I will create the component, and here also I will create the component, and we will import those. Right, let's see it in action. You can see address form written. If I click on next, then it will show previous button. So it's working correctly. Now here, for the checkout page, after all this is done, we also want to do one more thing, that is we want to get the cart. Now remember, if we don't have a cart, then we cannot use it to generate our token. So for that I will use cart. Then what I will do is I will use useEffect. Make sure you import it correctly. Inside this useEffect, I will check if cart is already present or not. If cart is not undefined, if it is not undefined, then what I will do is I will try. And try ends with a catch block, so you also should have a catch. So what will I try? I will try to generate a token, and if there is an error, then it will show this error. I will try to get a token, constant token, and to use await we need to make this an async function, and await for commerce, you import it correctly, dot checkout dot generate, and there we will pass cart dot id, and inside an object I will pass type cart. When it returns and response, I want to set it as our checkout token. This token. Now for this to happen, I need to also create another piece of state. So here I will copy this. So I will create this another piece of state, checkout token, and set checkout token, and its use state will be default value will be undefined, and there we will set this checkout token when we successfully generate this token. Otherwise we will console log error. Also one more thing, I will have to use here a dependency array of cart. Why? Because remember, sometimes cart actually remains undefined for a few seconds and then it shows that. So when our user visits our checkout page and if he refreshes, then maybe for the few seconds there will be no cart, and if cart is undefined, then there will be this error. There can be errors, and so we will wait for the cart to be defined once again, then we will try to generate the token once again. Now I think that I should move our useEffect to the top because we need it here. Then our address form and our payment form both needs this checkout token. So I will pass this checkout token as this checkout token, and both of this payment and address form both will need this checkout token. Address form will need this checkout token to generate the countries, subdivisions, and payment form will need this checkout token to capture this checkout, right? I will create another piece of state, and instead of checkout token I will name it as shipping data. Why do we need this shipping data? So when we fill up this address form, we need to store this shipping data, and then we need to pass it to payment, so that we can capture our checkout token with this shipping data as the order details, right? So I will pass here actually set shipping data, and here I will pass shipping data. Now here when we are doing this shipping data, we will get a value, and we want to set that value in our with this set shipping data, whatever value we'll get. I can also rename this as data. Now one more thing that I am going to say is, instead of doing all these, we can call our next step function here. See, we are rendering this two steps in this multi-step form, right? So we don't need to use this logic. We can pass we can call next step button only on address form and not on payment form, and for payment form we can call only previous step, right? We can do that manually. We don't need to use this logic and all. So what I will do here is, I will delete this one, and here I will do something like, I will call the next step function. That's it. And let's keep this previous step for now. I'm not concerned about it right now. So we are done with this active step for address form. Now what I will do is, I will create this address form, but before creating I want to actually install React hook form. Now why am I using this React hook form? Because this will make our task very easy, and otherwise creating a form, maintaining, and those are all tedious, very tedious. So I am leveraging React hook form here. So one more thing now, since I am getting this checkout token and I am saving it here, I want to render this step form only when my checkout token, we get the checkout token. Otherwise, if we don't have the checkout token, I don't want to render these steps at all. Because you see here, we are passing the checkout token, and if checkout token is undefined, we will be inside this address form, we will have some problem. So I want to show this step form only when this checkout token is present. So I will do something like checkout token, then React fragment. Otherwise I will have this colon, and then I will show a text of loading. And inside this React fragment we will have both of these. I will cut them and I will paste them here, and I will save this. Now you can see it looks like this. So let's see that in action. Make sure you have your cart has some items, otherwise you cannot go to checkout. If you go to checkout, then you will not see anything. So here you can see loading for a few seconds, and then you can see our address form being shown, right? So inside this address form, what I will do is, I will now create an address params array, which will have the objects. Each object will have a property of name and a type. I want to create an address form where we have several inputs whose name will be first name, last name, address, email, city, and zip, and those inputs types. So for first name our type will be text, for email our type will be email, for zip our type will be number, like that. So let me show you what I mean. So here I will use address params dot map, and then for each param I will return input whose type will be param dot type and whose name will be param dot name. Now since I am using React hook form, just now I installed it. So what I will do is, instead of showing this input, I will create a decorated input component where we will have a label, we will have complete form element, right? So I will create a form input component over here, and that component will have this param as this param, and let's create that inside this form directory only. I will create it. So form input.js. So here I will give this div a class name of form element, which will be a CSS class which I create later, and then I will give it a label. Let's import the param first as a prop. Labels text will be this param.name, and it will be also for HTML for the param.name. And the input, now we will have this input whose ID will be param.name and type will be param.type. Now using this also helps us retains this address params. Using this address params array will also help us make our code very clean, right? And also this is separate, so if any error occurs, we can fix those errors correctly, right? Let's import react hook form over here. We are going to use the use form hook. And what are the properties we are going to use for it? From use form: handle, submit, register, and set value. These are the three we are going to need for now. And also here I need to pass register. Why do we need to pass register? So that inside this form input component I can have something like, wait a second, get register over here, and then I can do something like register, and the name will be param.name. That's it. If I save it, it should work now. I have written here div, but it should not be div, it should be actually form. So let me change it to form, and on submitting this form we will use this handle submit function of the use from the use form hook, and inside this use form hook we will do something like, now what is the submit data? Submit data is a function that I am creating now, and this will get the data. From how will it get the data? So this handle submit will make sure that the submit data gets our data, that is the form values. Now we are getting the checkout token, right? So the checkout token, and if you go to the checkout page, you can see that we are address form is getting this checkout token and this set shipping data. So I will use the set shipping data here as well, and here I will shade this shipping data to the data we are getting when we submit our form. So this data is nothing but the form's data. When we submit the form, the data that we submit in this form, this is that data, and this data will be set to the shipping data. And also what I want to do is I want to console.log. So let's see it in our browser now. It should show loading. Then after a few seconds you can see that it is showing the first name, last name, address 1, email, city, and zip. Now one thing it is missing is a submit button. So we can do something like button type submit, and then inside this button I will say something like next. Why next? Remember here inside this set shipping data, not only do we set this shipping data to our checkouts page, we also call this next step function. And what is this next step function? This function which sets our active step, increments our active step +1. Now when I come back to my browser and I will fill up the form. Now as I fill up my form, what I will do is I will press the next button. But before I press, I want to open my console, and here I want to see that whatever data I am passing is being console logged here. So I press next. Here you can see the first name, address I gave C, city I gave Kohli, email I gave this, first name I gave A, last name I gave B, and zip I gave something. So it is working. Now the next step will be, I will go to the previous, and I want to stylize this form. So how do I stylize this? I will paste inside the global.css, I will paste some CSS, and let me explain them one by one. So what form element does is, so see it, and here see it also. So let me explain this. What happens is this width is 100%, so it takes the 100% of the width. Place item center, so these are placed center, and display of grid. Why display of grid? Because see, this is the label and this is the input, and I want to use grid template column. So this label takes 30% and this elim input takes 70%. And also these will have a padding of 0.5 em. Right now, for the label and input inside this form element class, all will have another extra padding. Will have some margin so that there is this gap, and all will have the same width of 100%. Now media screen, that means for the screens whose width is below 729 pixels, for those what I will do is I will make the grid template columns. There we will set the columns, so columns are like this. So here we will set the columns to auto, and we will set the rows to 50%, so that this is shown here and this is shown in the next row, right? So the label will be shown in the first row, and the input will be shown in the next row, and the column will be 1 now because we have set it to auto. In the padding, we will remove the padding, and we will give some margin, different margin. So the left and right will have 0.2 em, and top and bottom will have 0.5 em margin. Now that we are done styling, we also need to create country select component to render 3 different select elements for selecting countries, subdivisions and shipping options. Why? Because this component gonna have 3 use effects and a lot of complex codes, so separating it from address form component makes more sense. Now let me explain. We will first fetch the countries, and then as we get response, we will set the first country as a selected country. Now then we will get the subdivisions of that selected country. So based on that selected country, we will fetch the subdivisions, and then as we get response, we will set the first subdivision as a selected subdivision. Similarly, we will also fetch shipping options. Okay, then I will render this country select component over here with these props. I will explain later why we need each of those props. Then let's create this country select component. Inside the country select, what I have done here is I have created a function empty React component with getting the props of checkout token and register, and I've also imported commerce and also from React, useEffect and useState, and I am returning empty fragments. So I will also import a form select which I have created, but it is an empty component, so don't worry. Then I have created some empty states. What are these empty states? Countries, subdivisions and shipping options. So we need to fetch these countries, subdivisions and shipping options, and I will store them in our state, country select state, right? Then what I will do is I will create the use effect. So the first thing I will do is I will, since I have already imported useEffect, now I will check that if checkout token is defined or not. If it is defined, only then we will start doing our process. Otherwise not. And also one more thing, that useEffect should have a empty dependency array, right? So I will await. To use await, we need to make this async function as well. Now I will await for Commerce.js dot services dot locally list shipping countries, and to get these shipping countries I also need to pass my checkout token dot id. What happens is this will hit the Commerce.js servers with to get the local list of shipping countries based on the checkout token dot id. And after that is done, what I will do is I will do something like then with the response I will console dot log that response, and that is for now, and I will later on show you what I will do with that. And I can also catch error, and then console dot error. You can see that after a few seconds this countries object will be shown. This countries object has another object of countries, and inside that we have this code which is BD and name which is Bangladesh. Now when I want to save that in our state, country select state, when I want to save that in our state, what I can do is I can format this. I will create another array, countries array. Why I am creating this array? So I am creating this array because I want to store these objects properties as each individual object of that array will have a code property which will have the code, and the name property which will have the name. For example, the code will be BD and the name will be Bangladesh, like that, right? So for that to do, we need to first do something like object.keys and then pass the object. So what object.keys does is it returns an array of all the keys of that object, and keys are the BD, IN, just like I showed, right? So then what I will do is I will map those, and for each key I want to return a object, and the object's format will be code, that key itself, name will be the value that is present in value of that key in that object. So how to get a value of a key in any object? So this is the object, and to get a value of the key we will write third brackets, and inside the third brackets we will write the key. That is how we get the value of an object. So that is in here it will return the name, so like that. And then what I will do is I will set that to my countries array, and then just for showing you what I will do here is I will map this countries array dot map, and for each country I want to return a li tag for now. Let's save this and let's see it in action now. And also one more thing, instead of countries array it should be countries. That was a mistake on my part. Let's wait for it. And here you can see that it is showing the code BD, name Bangladesh, code IN, name India. So it's working. Now I will delete this. Instead of this list options, we want to show select with options, right? For that to happen, I will create form select, which will be a component similarly like input form input. And there I will pass properties like title. Title property will be the name of that select, that is country, right? And then I will also pass a property of array. Why an array? So that we can map these countries and we can have them as options. So for that. And also I will pass the register, just like I passed it to form input, I'll pass it here as well. So what I have done is I have blindly copied form input, right? And here instead of param, just as I said, I will get title and array, right? And here also instead of param.name, wherever you see param.name, just replace them with title. But here instead of input I will show select, and select does not have any type, so I will remove this type. Also select is not a self-closing tags, so I will close them. Select, and here we will have app options, so we want to map those options. So array dot map, then for each object in that array I want to return option whose value will be that object's code, object.code, and the text content that is displayed will be object.name. That's it. And now instead of form input, this name should be form select. Save this. Yes, I will save this here and I will go to the browser. Now you can see here it shows country, and here I can choose any country I want, right? Bangladesh and India is getting shown over here. Now similarly, like the useEffect, I also want to get the countries as subdivisions as well. But because we have two countries, see, Bangladesh will have different subdivisions, India will have different subdivisions. So how to make sure that which country is getting selected, right? How to show the subdivisions. So if say Bangladesh is selected right now showing, so we need to show fetch the subdivisions of Bangladesh. We cannot fetch subdivisions of all countries and then show them. We cannot do that, right? So how to do that? So to do that, I also need another piece of state here. That will be selected country, and this selected country will not be a empty array, rather it will be undefined in the beginning. And here what I will do is I will actually set the selected country for the first time over here as the countries array's first object, countries array, and then the first element of the countries array can be get by this format, which is third brackets, inside that 0. Right? Now also one more thing that I want to say is what if, so initially this is selected country, right, when we get the data. Now what if I want to I change this to India? What if, then how to fetch the subdivisions of India? So for that, inside this form select, we need to have a on change event here, listener, so that when it changes, we can send, we can get a callback. We can say there e.target.pen. Now instead of callback, we want it actually that set selected country, right? So we will actually get a callback here, and here I will pass the set selected country over here. So in that way it will set the selected country as e.target.val. And you might also do one more thing, that is e.prevent default. Now after we change the country, since we will change the country, so I want to run another useEffect. I don't want to run this useEffect because we are already fetching countries. So when we change the selected country, we want to fetch new subdivisions, but not countries once again. So for that I will create another useEffect. That will also be an async function, and here what I will do is I will check that selected country is not undefined, only then we will do something. And also the dependency array will be selected country. Why? Because whenever the selected country changes, we want to fetch new subdivisions, right? Now how to get the subdivisions? I await commerce.services.local list shipping subdivisions, and to get the subdivisions we need to pass our checkout token as well as the country code. The country code would be selected country. Also one more thing, instead of setting selected countries as countries array the first element, we will set the first element's code property. Why? Because here you can see e.target.value. What will be the value? See here we are setting the value as object.code, so the value also here will be that code value only. For that we also need to maintain this code over here, right? Country.code will be whatever which I will remove that here and select country. Detail with the response, I want to console.log that response to show you, and .catch error, I will console.error that response. Let's save it, and instead of checkout token I should have passed checkout token.id, and you can see that subdivisions are getting shown. So inside this subdivisions we have subdivisions object which has all the subdivisions of Bangladesh. If I will close this one. If I now change this to India and wait for a few seconds, then it is showing all the subdivisions of India. You can see that the format is similar to like countries. So what we can do here is we can do the same thing here. So I will copy this exact same thing, and I will copy these two lines, and instead of console.logging I will have this as inside the curly braces. I will paste those and give them some spacing. Instead of countries array it should be subdivisions array. I rename that. Instead of res.countries it should be res.subdivisions, like that. Here also subdivisions, like that. And instead of set countries these should be subdivisions. That's it. Now let's save this. I will create another form select component, right? And this form select component will have the callback as callback remains same. I will see that later. So here I will pass the subdivisions. This, just let me show you that it is completely getting rendered, right? Let me load this page, and after a few seconds of time you can see here Bangladesh is getting shown, and here the subdivision is getting shown. So I will open India over here, and the subdivisions will change, and the subdivisions have changed. I can open Bangladesh again, and after a few seconds of time the subdivisions have changed once again. So this is working. Now what should we do with the callback? Now to fetch the shipping options, we again need to get the selected subdivision, right? So that is why we need to set as we need to have another piece of state which will be selected subdivision, right? So I will copy the selected country, and here what I will do is I will change this to a subdivision. Then I will save this, and here instead of set selected country I will pass the set selected subdivision. So with that being done, what I will do here is I will create another use effect. This use effect will be called only when this subdivision is changing. Suppose I want to change the subdivision from Chattogram to Dhaka. What will happen then? Then I want to show when the subdivisions change, I want to show the shipping options based on the subdivisions that have changed. And when I'm changing the subdivisions, I definitely will not want my subdivisions to be fetched once again, because why will I need to fetch my subdivisions? Those are already fetched, right? So for that I will fetch my shipping options only when the subdivisions are changed. For that I will create another use effect, and inside this use effect I will have async, because we will definitely use Commerce.js servers. I will also check that our selected subdivision is present. And also one more thing, that set subdivisions here, we will set the default subdivision as set selected subdivision as subdivisions array. The first element of the subdivisions array whose code property, right? So here we will take that if selected subdivision is present, only then I will await for commerce instead of service commerce dot checkout dot, and note that this is checkout, not services. Services is for getting subdivisions and countries, right? Commerce dot checkout dot get shipping options, and inside this get shipping options I will pass the token, and inside this data I will pass country and region. You can see that those here if you hover, right? So token will be checkout token dot id. Remember this id, right? And also here the country, inside an object I will pass the country as selected country and region as selected subdivision. Then with the response, you know what to do, and so do I. Console.log this response, and then console.log error this error if there is an error. And one more thing that is very important step, that is don't forget this dependency array, otherwise it will show unwanted errors, undesirable errors, right? So I actually mistook that instead of subdivisions it should be selected subdivision, right? So remember that. When we come back to the browser, you can see that for console logs, countries of Bangladesh, description is international, this ID and the price, that is 10 rupees. If I change this to India, then wait for it, and you can see that now a new object gets console logged. This is India, delivery and shipping, and the price is 0 over here. So but here we have a problem. Like previously we had the codes as an object, but here we don't have that an object. We have an ID property which we will definitely set, and also we have this price for property. This is an array, so let's create the arrays. Let's create the shipping options array. Since this is an array and not an object, so we will not use object.keys. Rather we will use response dot name. For each array element we will format a return object whose code will be this ID and whose name will be the description, along with the formatted with symbol, price dot formatted with symbol. So for each response, it is I named it lm. For each lm I want to element long for lm. I want to return object whose code property will be this lm.id, and name property will be use tilde keys for string interpolation. Here I will have the $sign and this curly braces, then the dynamic value lm.description, then hyphen, which is the static part, and again the dollar and curly braces, and lm.price formatted with symbol. That's it. And I will set shipping options. I will have selected shipping option and set selected shipping option. Set selected shipping option over here, and what will I set? The first option dot code. That's it. So let's get another form select over here, and here instead of set selected subdivision I will pass set selected shipping option, and instead of subdivision it should be shipping options. Instead of subdivisions it should be shipping options, and register remains same. So let's see it now. Country is Bangladesh, subdivision is Chattogram, and let's see the shipping option is international 10 rupees. Right, if I change this to India, it is again Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and I fill up my form. I've filled it up and I want to see the console logging, so I will click on the next button now, and you can see here it is console logging address SC, city as Poli, country is IN, that is short for India, that is a code, email this, first name, last name, shipping option, this ID, subdivisions is DL, which is our Delhi subdivision code, zip is the zip that I passed, that's it. Now if you are seeing this, each child in a list should have a unique key prop, this error, then you can just directly go to the form select, and here while for each option we will have a key, whose value will be obj.code. That's it. This will fix that error, and you can refresh the page and you can see there is no error. After this all get loaded, if I now our form is empty, right? If I click on the next button now, you can see I am getting shown the payment page now, and the data that I submitted is blank, but we don't want that to happen, right? So to prevent that to happen, what we can do is inside the form input and in the form select we can make these inputs and selects required, so that all of them are required, and without them filling up we cannot submit our form. So to do that, what I will do is inside the parenthesis of register, after the param.name I will write something like object. I will create object where I will write required, which will be set to true. That's it. And I will copy this same thing and I will paste it here inside the register. After the title I will do a comma and then save this, save it here. Let's see it in action. Now if I reload this page, and now if I click on the next button, you see I cannot there is nothing getting shown console log, because we have not filled up the form. So the first form gets highlighted, first name is highlighted. I have filled the form, first name, last name, address 1, email, city, zip, etc. Now countries default is Bangladesh, and subdivisions default is Chattogram, and shipping option is the default one. Now what I will do is I will click on next, but here you can see that Bangladesh is now getting focused, because it appears that Bangladesh is not getting selected. So I will click, and then if I click on next, now it is showing that the subdivision is not getting selected. So I will again do that myself manually, then it will show the shipping option. Now there is only one option, what is there to select, but still it is showing, so we need to select that. And now that we can see, not many users will love this, that they have to select their default country once again manually, select the default subdivision or select the default shipping option. Only one option is there, and that also they have to select. So that might not be what every user wants. So what we can do is, I will go to the country select, and here after this set selected country, what we can do is we can set the value manually ourselves in the client code, that this first country is code, and here the default, so that the default value is getting selected. Like here is the Bangladesh shortogram and international 10 rupees is the default value. So I want that to be set, right? This default value should be set, so that when we fill the address form, then we don't need to, if we want to keep this as default, then we can keep those default country and international shipping option and subdivisions. Then if we click next, then our form will get submitted without manually selecting the default options, right? So to do that, I will do something like set value. But how will I get the set value? So remember, in the address form we were actually getting the set value, so we will pass the set value to our country select. And here I will first of all access that property. After that is done, so here what I will do is, to set a value we need to give the name of whose value we are setting, right? And I am giving it to country. Why country? Because see here we are labeling it as country, right? So to country, and then here this country's address dot code, this same thing. So the first value will be set as default. First country's code will be set as the default country, right? And I will copy this statement, and I will do this for subdivisions as well. So the name we are passing to subdivisions is subdivisions. I will do that, and these will also be subdivisions array, and I will copy this same thing for shipping options as well. And in the shipping options I will pass them as, so I have given it a name of shipping options. Now I will save this file, and let's see what it turns out to be. So I will refresh this page. It takes some time and then returns. So I will start filling up my form now. Now as I have filled up my form, I have not selected my country, my subdivisions or my shipping options, right? If I click on next, you can see that it by default select country as BD, that is Bangladesh, and shipping options is set, and also the subdivision is set. See that here is loading is getting shown, and now for a few seconds you can see that country is not getting selected, then the subdivisions, then the shipping options. It is taking some time. Now while it is taking some time to do that, the user is not understanding what is happening. Now some users might be frustrated, some users might not like this behavior as well. So instead of showing the country, subdivision and shipping options, I will show a loading state first of all, and after that loading is completed, then I will show them this country, these subdivisions and the shipping options. So I will introduce some loading states. Initial loading. Why initial loading? I will explain that later. Initial loading and set initial loading. Use state for a true. The default value will be true, because we want to set it true for the first time, and after we have fetched the shipping options as well, then after this catch statement I will set it to false. So after we have fetched all the three shipping options, countries and subdivisions, then we are rendering all the three options as well. After that we will be setting the initial loading as false, and where we will render our initial loading. So if I will take if initial loading, then I will return a span. That's it. Otherwise we will render this one. So let's see that. You can see facing countries, subdivisions and shipping options is getting shown here, and after a few seconds you can see that all the data is getting shown here, right? Also one more thing I want to show is, if I change the country, say for example from Bangladesh to India, and please keep an eye on this short program written here, this subdivision, right? And while I change the country, please keep an eye on this subdivision. See, the subdivision is getting shown Chattogram for a few seconds, and after that it is getting shown to Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So that also might be a problem for the users. Normally it won't, but still it can be. And also the shipping option is also getting changed a bit late. So see here, then this got changed and this, then this. So it is taking a bit time. So what I will do is I will introduce some loading states for these both of them. I will create a new piece of state known as loading and set loading, and initial default value will be empty strings. Why empty strings? Let me explain that. So in the first use effect we will not set anything. So when our country changes, that is in the second use effect will be called then, and in the second use effect we will set our loading as subdivisions. Why? Because I am trying to do, that is using one loading state, I want to have loading conditions for these both of them, this form select for subdivisions and form select for shipping options. Now as I set here subdivisions, set loading subdivision, so we will not if we will check here that if subdivisions is there, loading is equal to subdivisions, then we will not show form select, we will show something like loading subdivisions or fetching subdivisions, right? For that I have given this a name of set loading subdivisions. And inside this use effect we will not do anything, and inside this use effect what I will do is I will set loading to true. What that means? That means we are setting the loading as subdivisions. After the subdivisions is fetched, now just because the selected subdivision is also getting changed, we will now call this use effect, and when we start calling this use effect, the first thing that we will do is we will set loading to true. Now why a string value of true and not something like a shipping option or something like that? That is because I want to render this form select if loading has any value. Say if our loading is true, then also I will show this. If our loading has subdivisions, then also I will show loading over here. And after loading is completed, both the loading state is completed, then I will show the shipping option here, because that is what we wanted. So after that is done, set loading is true, after our shipping option is actually fetched, what I will do is I will set loading back to its original value. Original value was default empty string. Now let's conditionally render this, and when I start conditionally rendering this, you will understand it better. So the first condition I will check is if loading is triple equals to subdivisions, then we will show something like a paragraph tags with fetching subdivisions written. Otherwise, if our loading is not subdivisions, then we have already loaded our subdivisions, then we will show this form select. But for the shipping options, what I will do is I will check that its loading's length is greater than 0. That means when we set here true, that means it is greater than 0. 0 means empty string, right? So here it is the empty string, and when I set it to subdivisions, then it is not 0, then it is not empty, then it will show the loading. And when we set it to true, then also it is not 0, then also it is not empty, that means we will still show the loading. And after that we set here to empty string, that means if it is length is not greater than 0, then we will show this form select. I will close this, and now let's see it in action. So I will go back to my Chrome browser and I will refresh this page. So it is showing the first loading which we used as initial loading, right? So it is showing that whenever this component renders for the first time. But when I change the country, see here we are showing fetching subdivisions and fetching shipping options, and then again still fetching shipping options because our country subdivisions was loaded. Still I showed the fetching shipping options. Let me change this once again to a different state, and you can see that fetching shipping options is again getting shown. If I change it to another state, still it will be shown. And if I change my country, both of those loading states will be shown. Then our subdivisions will be loaded, then after a few seconds our shipping options will be loaded. During that time our user will see some visual confirmation that those are getting fetched. And I personally feel that that is a better practice, right? So I will now fill up my form once again. Now I've filled up my form, but I also want to show you one more thing, that is if I change my country right now, I change it to India and then I send it next, You can see here we see some React errors, but more than that error, what I am concerned is you can see here that my country is changed to India, but subdivisions is showing 10. 10 is the code for Chattogram, that is a subdivision of Bangladesh, but not India. So why is that happening? Because even though our countries are loading, our shipping options get loaded, but still there the shipping option that we face, such as this Chattogram is getting loaded. If I change it to India for few seconds, that subdivision is still there. So that is a problem. So when I start this initial loading and all those, I don't want to the users to click this next button. That means when I change our country or our state or something like that, when our data is getting fetched, I don't want the user to click this next option. And about that error, React error, which we saw here, if you see this error, if you search on Google, you can find different solutions, but most of the solutions say that our React was fetching some data, and while fetching we unmounted our component, so we need to cancel all our subscription or asynchronous tasks. What are those asynchronous tasks? This fetching of data. But here most important thing is we don't want our user to go to next page when we are already fetching data for our countries and subdivisions. So what we can do is I can make this next button disabled. That way it will not only fix this error warning, it will also make sure that the user cannot go to the next page without selecting the subdivision or shipping option. We don't have any button over here, we have the button address form. So how to make this disabled? To make it disabled, we can pass a disabled prompt over here, which will take a value of false or true. Now to make this thing dynamic, I can use a disabled. And what is this disabled? That will be a piece of state. So that will be true actually initially. What happens is after we have set this initial loading, after we have actually fetched all the shipping options, I also want to make this disabled to be false. For that I will get the disabled over here, set disabled over here, and also over here as well I will pass the set disabled. Now what I am trying to do is I will disable this next button based on when we have already fetched all the shipping options as well. And when I fetch all the shipping options, that means I have already fetched all the countries, I have already fetched all the subdivisions, and now I have also finished fetching the shipping options. So I have finished all my asynchronous tasks in my useEffect. So that means we can prevent that error and also a warning, and also we can prevent our user to go to the next page without getting without selecting anything. That scenario can we also prevent, because our we are manually setting the default values for our users for these three cases, right? So I will set the disabled to false. So now when I load my checkout page, first of all this loading indicator is getting shown, then our button is now disabled. We cannot we can fill up this form, but we cannot submit our data. And I change my country, it is not getting disabled because inside the country select we have set disabled to false, but we have not set disabled to true. So I will copy it. When we start loading our subdivisions, just before that I want to make sure that our disabled is set to true, so our button is disabled as well. So now if I change my country, you can see my button is getting disabled, and after a few seconds you can see that if I change my state, then also the button should be disabled. So I will copy this and I will do this one here as well, set disabled to true. So when I change my state, the subdivision, then also our button is disabled. when I change my country, then also my button is disabled, right? So it's working absolutely correct. There won't be any React error. Now that we are done with our country select form, and actually we are done with our address form completely, right? So I will go back to the checkout page. So the next step is of payment form. So that is we will have the payment component. So inside the payment component, now what I want to do is I want to render all the data that he submitted as shipping data, as well as all the line items of our checkout, and that is those products that we are buying, the user is buying, and with the total price that the user is going to pay. And finally what I will show is a form where he can input his credit card details. Now we are using test gateway, that is why he has to input some specific credit card details, but normally people use Stripe, Razorpay, etc. So there are options for that in our Commerce.js docs as well. You can go and read those there. So let's do it now. So here first of all we will have the props. So the props are inside this div. The first thing I will show is h3, which will have shipping data. So what I did here was I was rendering the shipping data's first name and the last name. So the user's first name and the last name, his address, his email, his city, his postal zip code, his country code, and subdivision code. Now I will have a header of items you are buying, and then from checkout token.live.line items I will map those line items one by one. I will give them a key, and instead of key it should be li tags, and item.product name, item.line total formatted with symbol. So the total price that we will bring for that particular product, its name and the quantity of that product, right? And then here we are showing the checkout to total price that we are going to be paying along with the shipping charges. So for that I have given this plus icon, and I've also logged out the checkout token to get those data one by one. So if you go to the browser, you can see the checkout token data and you can see them one by one, right? And ignore this right now, you can see them one by one. So for that, now after that is done, how to get the shipping charges, extra shipping charges. So for that what I will do here is I will create a variable with the name of constant shipping charges, and this will be just a variable, no piece of state is required right now. So I will get the checkout token, and then I will get the shipping methods, note the underscore over here, and then I will use the find. So shipping methods is an array. If you go here you can see that it is an array. We will check find, and we will find what? We will find the object. Here both the shipping options are getting shown. Now we will find the object whose ID the user sent, whose ID when he filled out the form, right? So I will check the ID, object's ID for all the objects inside this array. We will check match the ID with the ID what is passed as shipping data, shipping options. And let me just remind you once again, this is the select option, shipping options, and we are setting the data over here. So that data should be, we should match with it, and we will return our object. And then here after the plus we will show shipping charges, price formatted with symbol, and inside the bracket I will write shipping charges. Then I will save this, and you can see that here $10 rupees only. Now inside this form I have already created a button with the type submit and pay now. Now I will create the form inputs one by one. The first form input will have a param as name as number, and type will be number, and register will be unregistered, which I will import right now, don't worry. Then I will also have another form input with expiry month, another one with expiry year, another one with CVC, and the last one with postal zip code. Now to get this registered, I will go to address form, and and here you can see that we used use form, register, handle, submit, set value. We need all of them except the set value. So I will import the React code form, use it here, copy that line, and also I will copy this line. And I don't need the checkout token console logging anymore, so I will place it here. Instead of set value, we don't need that here. I'll save this. I will also import form input. Now it first loads, and I think the first thing will be address form. Let's fill up the form and let's go. And here you can see the number, expiry month, expiry year, CVC, postal zip code, all are getting shown, and we just need to pass the number and all these things properly. And then what will happen if I submit this form? So what will happen, we need, on submitting, we need to have something like on submit, we will handle that submit and call a function known as pay now. This pay now function will be a async function. And what will it get? Now remember, in the address form, when we are filling up this submit data, we are getting some data. Similarly, here also we will get some data, and I will name it card data because it is filling the card details, right? So that is why card data. Inside that, the first thing I will do is we want to capture our checkout, right? So to capture our checkout, we have a format. We have a format of data, and you can go to Commerce.js docs, and there you can find that format. So I've already found out that format. So I will link down that format also down in the description. Let's create an object with the name of order details. Inside that object, the first thing I will have is line items, which will be this checkout token.live.line items. Then I will have a customer object, which will have email, shipping data.email, first name and last name. Similarly, I will have another object known as shipping, and there I will have the name of primary. This is a very important thing, don't miss this. Name primary, and then I will start having street, town, city, country, state. And remember, this town, city and country state, these are in the format. I am not naming them myself, right? So remember that. Postal zip code and country, and then I will have another object. This is the last object, which will have fulfillment, and inside that fulfillment we have a shipping method object property, which will have this shipping data dot shipping option. That's it. Now what I will do, I will, since I have made this an async function, why? Because I will use commerce. So let's import that one as well. Commerce.checkout.capture will capture what? Token.id. Then create an empty object, and inside that empty object I will start giving the order details. So dot order details, that means it will be in this format. Then here comes payment object. Inside the payment object we will have to mention our gateway for our payment, test gateway, and then I will have the card, which will have all the details of the card. So what are the details our card has? Number, which will be card data dot number. And why I am having this as capital? Because I have named them as capital, right? That is why. Similarly, expiry month, expiry year, CVC, postal zip code, we will write all of those. That's it. And with the payment being done, I think with the payment being done, then we will have .date response. We want to console.log that response for now. Catch any error. We want to console.error that error. That's it for now. So let's do that. So as you can see here, I will fill up the form, and there are 16 digits, 4242, like that. It will be 16 digits. And then the experiment will be something like 12. You can give any expiry year. 1, 2, 3, CBC will be 1, 2, 3, postal zip code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then let's click on pay now. I will open up my console, and here I am having an error, that is the given data was invalid. The shipping method field is required. So that's my mistake, I guess. Shipping option. Oh, we will have to use a method like this. Let's see it now. Now I will click on the pay now, and it should console.log a pay order response. I will pay it now and wait for a few seconds, and here you can see that it returned a response. Now we can find all the data inside this console log, and here are the concerned ones, that is order. Inside the orders you can see the subtotal, and the total will have all total price, that is this 1070 plus 10 rupees, so it is 1080, so that is getting shown here, right, like that, right? So you can and one more thing, that is this customer reference. This is very important, and that's it. Now what I will want to do is, when I have already paid, I want to show, instead of this form, I want to show our text, that is wait till we process your payment, right? And we don't need to show the form and this button right then. And after that is done, I think we should move this to a confirm order page. That will be a better option, or you can show it here also, whatever suits you. So I will first of all start with loading, so that instead of when the payment button is clicked, then it should not show this form, rather it should show the what should we say, the loading, right? So how to do that? So I will get back to my payment component, and here I will have the state, which is this loading state. I will import use state. Initially it will be false. Now as I click on the pay now button, then I want to set it to true. And after we are done, if we have any error, then I will set it back to its original place, that is false. Also, one more thing that I forgot to say, what if our payment actually fails? Then we will set another piece of state that will help us showing the error. We will show the error before the form. So to do that, I will also have another piece of state, name it error. Instead of false, it will have blank, undefined, and here I will have curly braces, and after that I will have set error. What will be that error? This error what we are passing. The error can be actually broken down also. So how can it be broken down? It can be broken down to data, and then here we can have this data dot error dot message, and here before the form I will have two things, that is the first one is this header with the CSS error, and here we will show our error. If there is any error, only then I want to show this. So I will also have error, and then I will show this statement over here. Paste it here, and for the form I will have another conditional rendering such as loading. If it is true, then I want to show a p tag which will have your data. Otherwise I will show this form. Otherwise I will show this form. Okay, so that is done. And what if our payment is successful? I will come back to that later. So I will go back to home page, and I will refresh this page. Now my cart should be empty. Now I will add to cart some items. Then I will go back to cart. I will go to checkout link. Then I will fill up the data, but here instead of doing this 4-2, I will do 1 2 3 4. Now I know that if I don't give the number test gateway number, that is 4242, like this 16 digits, if I don't do that, then it will have a problem, that is it will throw the error. So let's do that. Anything here as well. Let's pay now, and I know that error will occur. So if I click on pay now, wait a second, I click on pay now, it shows wait while we process your data, and then after 2 seconds it shows an error. Please enter a valid testing card number, that is 42, like this. So you can see that our error is getting shown here, right? Now when I give a valid testing number, that is this number, let me copy this and paste it here. And now if I click on pay now, I should see the order. So let's open up my console over here. And here if I click on pay now, you can still see that the error is still getting shown. And to fix that, what I want to do is I will go back here and I will actually set the error. When I click the pay now for the first time, I want to set the error to be null. So even if there was error, if I click the pay now once again, then I want the error to be gone, and after our payment fails, then I want that error to be set once again. So now my error should not happen. Then it should not show the error message. You can see the error message is vanished, and after a few seconds you should see the order, but there is still that error. And yes, instead of 1 it should be 2. Let's see. Now it should show the order over here. And you can see here the order is getting shown, right? But here the loading is also still loading. Before fixing that, I also need to make sure that we do something with the response and then we set the data. So what we can do here with the response is, before doing anything, we can set order over here. We can set it on our state. So what I will do is, I will, instead of loading, I will also have another piece of state which is order. Set order, and here we will have this as undefined. But when our payment is successful, I want to set response as set order, and after it is done, I want that set loading to be false, set loading to be false once again, and not throw any errors. I need to pass this curly braces over here, wrap this in curly braces, and now we will not see. But what we will do with this order is, I will actually conditionally render. If I see that order is not invalid, the order is not undefined, that means order is present, then we will show something order successful. Otherwise we will show this form and all this. Still have problems, so I will wrap them in React fragments. That's it. Save these. Let's see it now. I think we need to, just because our order was successful, our cart has by now it has been refreshed, I guess. So I need to refresh my cart. I need to manually refresh my cart right now. See, my cart is now 0. So I will add to cart some items. Then I'll fill up this form as well. Then I'll click on pay now button. And when I click on pay now button, I should see wait while we process your data, and then it has some error. What is the error? I don't know. Let me copy this one, paste it here, and let's start it again. Wait while we process your data, and it should show the order now. Order successful. As you can see that order successful is getting shown here. Along with order successful, I might want to show the order reference ID and the total value of the order that has been paid. So we can do that as well. We can do something like this. Wrap them in React fragments once again. Now browser now. So it will show error. Well, that is because order dot total. And click on pay now, and after a few seconds, thank you for ordering, and my name here, what I submitted, your order reference is this, total payment of 580 rupees. So it's working perfectly. The last thing that I will do is I will refresh our cart over here. Why we refresh our cart over here? So that when we our order is successful, then we inside our browser we can see that our cart has been refreshed. Otherwise it still shows the cart is 3 or 2 or whatever the cart item was, and we have to manually refresh our page, reload our site to see that. And how to get this refresh cart? I will get here refresh cart as a prop, and refresh cart is inside this app.js. If you see, we have a function known as handler known as refresh cart, and we have passed it here. So we just need to get it from checkout page. So to get it from checkout page, I will have here refresh cart. That's it. I will pass it to shipping return payment form. That's it, and save it here. So let's see it one more time. I have only one element in my cart. So what I will do is I will go to my cart page, and here I will go to checkout page. It starts loading. I will fill up this form. I will change my country to India. I change my state. I will then click next, and here you can see my name, my address, my email, city, postal zip, country code, subdivision code, their items I am buying, and also the total. So now I will give some numbers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's it. Now expiry month will be 12, expiry year will be 23, 24, whatever. CBC 123, postal zip code 12345, and then if I click on pay now, it's showing wait while we process your data, and then thanks for ordering, and then my name AB. Your order reference is this ID, total payment of 200 rupees, and you can see my cart here is refreshed to 0. That is it for this video. Thank you for watching, and to all my subscribers, thanks for supporting. See you in the next video.